Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Liberation Podcast. Today we are going to be discussing The Unworthy by Augustina Batsterica. Now we have been fundraising for the Northern Gaza Water Fund, so we will have that linked below. For more content outside of the podcast, please check out our Instagram and TikTok at Literary Liberation and Twitter at LitLibPodcast. I'm your co-host Mariah, and you can find me at Hungry Rye on all social media platforms.
And I'm your co-host Kristen. You can find me at TensTBR on all social media platforms.
This was our 10th book club read, which is pretty cool. We've almost made it a whole year with our Literary Liberation book club over on Fable, and this is the one that won out. If you don't know, we had a little kerfluffle in the book club because we had 4 options, and at one point there was a 3-way tie.
Yes.
We ended up having to fix it, and this one ended up winning, which kind of took us all by surprise. I did not anticipate this.
Well, because I'm
kind of glad we did, because we read Tender as a Flesh as one of our very first episodes, and
so
that's kind of
Evan.
cool. Like, yes, Evan with At Left of the Projector. So we don't very often reread authors on this, so
that's not true.
Being able to do that.
That's literally not true at all.
I mean, unless it's a series.
R.F. Kuang?
Yeah, I know. So we have that, and then when else have we done?
We did a bunch of Freedom McFadden.
I mean, we did the series and that.
We did the teacher.
We to do individual. Yeah, I know we did the teacher, and then we did the series. But
yes, but that's what I'm saying. We've done multiple authors more than once.
Yeah, but this, it's a standalone. You know, I feel it's a little bit different. Obviously, we did R.F. Kuang. Anyways, let's just get into it.
Moving on. Well, because I guess we did talk about the author a bit. I didn't rewatch our Tender as the Flesh episode. I don't know if you did, which I don't think you did. Mariah's not big on rewatching us. But I know overwhelmingly all 3 of us did not like Tender as the Flesh. I think I ended up rating it 1 star whenever we read it. I don't know what you rated it back in the day, because it's been 2 years now, I guess. Over.
I originally read it in January of 2023.
But I
gave it a 3-star rating. I didn't hate it, but it just didn't exceed my expectations for what it was doing, and I didn't think the social commentary for me really lived up to what I wanted it to be. I definitely understand there's a different cultural significance to this book, where it is originally being printed compared to the United States, so I don't want to say this objectively, but I do think that in Argentina, this is probably, and given what I've read about it, a very powerful piece of literature. So it's just in the States, I thought it was okay. I already kind of knew everything about it, the meat industry and how exploitative it is.
Yeah, I do think, I didn't necessarily love it. I didn't think it was very scary or anything. I just thought it was kind of silly, and I think our main thing was that it felt more like vegan propaganda rather than human exploitation propaganda, whenever we read Tender as the Flesh is kind of what we felt it boiled down to. But I ended up liking this book a little bit more than Tender as the Flesh, but not a lot. I did not like this book very much either.
I knew it. I called it very early on. I listened to the audiobook just because I had a credit or something, and I wanted just to see what it would be like to listen to a horror novel as an audiobook, and the audiobook that I had was really good. I liked it so much I went out today and I bought a physical copy. I gave it a 4-star rating, which it completely exceeded my expectations, because I thought with Tender as the Flesh, which I thought was okay, I DNF'd 19 Claws in a Blackbird by her, which is her short story collection. I didn't like it. So my expectations were really fucking low. And this was kind of like a Maj-Paj kind of Parable of the Sower meets I Who Have Never Known Then. And I thought that was a really interesting novel, the way it was constructed.
I don't necessarily, I think it's because the way this book is written is that it's diary entries, right? But I don't think it necessarily worked well. I don't think it works well for a novel in this way. if it's not labeled like a diary, where I guess I understand that the character, they're only writing whenever they get time to write without being viewed and things like that, because they're obviously not allowed to because of the cult that they're in. I guess we're calling it that, which, because people have been calling this a cult book, which, like, yes, it's a cult book, but I wouldn't really classify this as a cult. Does that make sense? Because almost it feels more like these women are imprisoned rather than a cult. Does that make sense? Like, they don't have another option because of it's a dystopian society where this takes place.
I mean, yes, but also, like, in cults, it's kind of like that. Like, you go to them and they prey upon you because you're vulnerable and you feel as though you have no way out. So it's a cult. I would say it was like a cult in, like, the truest sense of the term.
I
It's
mean,
fanaticism.
well, yeah. I mean, to an extent, because I think I was more interested whenever, like, I guess we won't talk too much about, like, the novel and the spoilers and stuff, but there were certain aspects that I was more interested in than, like, the overall story and where this fell, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and, like, I don't want to get too far ahead because we are very early into filming this. Now, if you don't know, this is a translated novel. I think most people know at this point that it is translated. But
Mm-hmm.
Augustina Bastarrica is born or was born and raised in Buenos Aires, Argentina. So she was born in 1974, which is around the time of La Violencia that was happening. Operation Condor was happening in South America.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of political upheaval. Like, this is like anti-communist mass movements were happening. Pinochet in Chile was very prominent. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of shit happening politically. I recommend, when I was reading this, it reminded me of Still Life with Bones, Genocide Forensics, and What Remains by Alexa Haggerty, where she talks about from an anthropological forensics. I don't know exactly what her title is. I can't remember. Evaluating bones as a student in Guatemala and Argentina, and some of the history of the politics. And I think this is a good one to look and just understand the material reality of these countries and how they are still being affected to this day. Another one, different country, but Set Fear on Fire, the feminists call that Set the Americas Ablaze. This is a feminist organization here where they are combating femicide. So I think this is a really cool one. I'm trying to remember where they're from. This is Chilean. So those are two books that came to mind when I was reading this. And I think it made more sense as to what was happening politically within this novel and why it would be so important. And her as an author is just so revered where she lives. So that's kind of like where my head was at with this, and I can kind of see it in the reviews. This book originally came out in 2023, but it didn't get translated until this year. It has a 3.63 star on average, which is pretty good, I would say. 37,000 ratings and an 8.5K written reviews. Pretty popular, not nearly as popular as Cinders of Flesh. This one's kind of gone under the radar since it came out. I haven't heard anyone really talking about it except for a seldom video or two that'll pop up that have like 5 likes on it. And they're like, hey, like, this is kind of crazy because this one is better than Tender as the Flesh, but nobody's talking about it. And I think fascinating.
I think I have seen, there's a couple, like, big people that I follow on Book Talk and stuff. They were talking about this whenever it was first translated. Like Mandy Rules, I like her videos. She talked about it. She loves this book too. She's talked about it quite a few times on Book Talk. And I know I had a lot of, like, mutuals on Goodreads, for me specifically, that have read and reviewed this too, but then they also have read Tender as the Flesh as well. Because I know there's, like, one of your friends.
Caitlin?
Yes. She read it, and she didn't like this one as much as she liked Tender as the Flesh, which I thought was interesting. Because I can see why a lot of people, I can see to an extent why people liked it, because, like, again, if you like I Who Have Never Known Men, I didn't like that book that much either. I gave that book 3 stars, just because I don't necessarily like this stilted writing that I think because I feel like this is very like dull in a lot of ways, and I know you like that more, where I prefer almost a more, this isn't a very like action packed story, and there's not like, for what is going on, there's not a lot going on, if that makes sense.
This is where it gets a little bit more like speculative fiction. This
Yeah.
is a lot more along those lines, or like philosophical fiction. And I think that's kind of where I was very taken aback, because everything is not just spelled out for you. You're getting everything from flashbacks, or like what the main character remembers, what the world used to be, like what she read about, or what her mother taught her of the world, and her traveling before joining the cult. You're learning about a lot of the ecology and just the way that humans interact with each other. You kind of get this sense of like, this is the end. Like, this is capitalist society to the end. This is a harrowing tale of what is to come if you don't intervene. And I thought it was quite remarkable in that sense. I really wasn't expecting it to be as robust as it was.
I think my problem is, well, because like obviously it is like a novel that's discussing like climate change and many ways on how that's going to affect our future. I mean, there's lots of references to different countries that used to exist that now are completely underwater, no longer exist anymore because of like the rising ocean levels and things like that. But I think a lot of that stuff is almost too hidden that the average reader wouldn't necessarily get the critiques out of it, where I wish they went into more, which is why like I like Parable of the Sower more, because that does very clearly and very obviously state like climate change is bad, this is what we're going to experience and what we're going to see, versus this that it almost feels like undercut by like the weirdness of the cult and things.
It's interesting that you say that, because I also just finished this book, which is Marxism and Literary Criticism by Terry Eagleton, which is exactly what we're doing on this podcast. I was very astounded to read this book that was written in the 1970s, and it has a label to what Chris and I have been doing. And I knew we weren't the only ones historically that had done this. And to find this, and there was some of their Marxist literary critics in the past who had taken this stance that a piece of literature shouldn't, I think it was perhaps Marx who had said this, and it would make sense, where he thinks that a piece of literature should be more like exposing readers to their conditions through this artistic medium, but not just like holding their hand, but just to use it like artistically, because we do have things like Babel and Chain Gang All-Stars, which are very like overt and explicit with what is happening. It's nice to have something that isn't always like that, where you can assess it and be like, oh wow, I can recognize this and relate it back without it just being like lectured to you. So I definitely think this is like for a specific type of reader, which we talked about in the Parable episode. A specific type of reader, but not
I just don't prefer like subtlety in my novels personally, and that's the thing, that's everything. Reading is subjective for people's opinions on what they enjoy and what they dislike. You know, there's somebody that can eat this book up entirely and then hate Tender as the Flesh, first, or vice versa, or the same thing with this versus another story that has great Marxist criticism as well. That's what's so great about reading and writing, and there's so many authors, especially now, that everybody can consume and find exactly what they love. And I think that's one thing that like I think Book Talk has a bigger problem with, than they view like people having a negative review of their favorite book ever as someone being like stupid or less than or whatever have you. Even though I don't think, and I think that's something that like whenever we are more critical of a novel, we kind of, not necessarily that we get backlash and stuff, but you can tell people don't like some people are going to get offended and upset whenever you dislike their favorite thing, because they act as if it's a critique on their character and something, where it's like, I can appreciate, which is why I ended up rating this higher than Tender as the Flesh, because I do think that what it does is more effective than Tender as the Flesh, but it's still just not something that I enjoy whenever I read, especially whenever talking about climate change and capitalism. I think it's very like surface level, and I would want way more in my novel. I mean, you can ask Mariah, I prefer 500 plus page books typically, this is under 200 pages. This is never going to give me what I want out of a story, you know?
Yeah, and part of me wonders if because she is writing it in Argentina and because of the political repression that exists to this day and the way that like where I'm at in Still Life of Bones, they're talking about like La Violencia in Guatemala and how there is like perpetrators living next to victims and like you can't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And if you say anything or speak out against it, like she's trying to get these testimonials for the story to learn about like what happened to your family, why did this happen, what do you remember during this time, and they can't even attribute their own names to it because they will be executed because these death squads like still exist and target these people to this day. And I imagine the same thing happens in Argentina, which is why she constructs her novels in the way that she does, where she's not, okay, I'm not overtly saying it's about this government or this political system, but I did read an interview. I was very surprised that she had done with The Guardian, I believe is who it was. I'll have it linked in, yes, The Guardian interview. Let me find it. Where she said, she was talking about Tender as the Flesh and also her 19, I can never remember the title of it, 19 claws in a
Blackbird or something. I think it's Blackbird something.
Yes. But in this interview, she was saying, Tender as the Flesh is a mediation on what capitalism is. It teaches us to naturalize cruelty. She says, speaking over Zoom from the home she shares with her husband and two cats in Buenos Aires, capitalism is a system into which we are all born. We have it inside us, and patriarchy is part of that system. I try to work with this idea that we set each other in or we eat each other in a symbolic way. With women, it's so obvious because we can talk about human trafficking, war, and the way women are made invisible in different spheres. Here in Argentina, they kill women every day. Capitalism and cannibalism are almost the same, you know? So I think by having like more, she has to handle things a little bit more delicately when she's speaking out against those things. So I'm wondering if that's why it's designed the way it is and it isn't necessarily received as highly as it is where she lives, because obviously like it's getting lots of awards. And I don't know that Tender as the Flesh, like it's very popular. I don't know how it's fared in the US in comparison.
Well, what I think is interesting that she'll directly like call out capitalism in this Guardian interview, you know, but then not do it in her books. That's really interesting to me because I feel like maybe, I guess because less people are reading the interview or something, but I feel like if you're so afraid to call it out in your books, wouldn't you be afraid to like directly give it a name too in like a public interview?
I don't know, because it was done, or at least translated into English, and I don't know how the publishing sphere works in Argentina. So there's a lot of elements that I don't quite know how it works, but that's what I'm thinking why it's not so overt. And it's interesting, I would say, to see how far she's come and like how the social commentary is a lot more perceivable, I would say, and it makes more sense in this one as compared to Tender as the Flesh for me, and it seems like you got the same thing.
Yeah.
So it seems that her writing style is improving in a way that it's able to convey these messages a little bit more clearly. I think Tender as the Flesh, yes, like we know it was about the me industry, but it was super popular because it was like splatterpunk.
Yeah.
Initially, that's what I remember hearing. It wasn't the political themes, and I'm wondering that's why The Unworthy is perhaps not getting nearly as much attention either, because it's not hitting that splatterpunk
gore.
It's just gross and vile and makes you feel gross. Yes, this is gross and vile. Like there is gross things in it, but it was just so much more like different. I just felt it.
I wonder
resonated a lot differently, and I was just like, wow, this is great.
Well, because it was interesting too, because this one also had a lot more feminist aspect that I think ends up working a lot better in this one versus Tender as the Flesh, where I think in Tender as the Flesh, the like feminist aspect was almost thrown in at the end to be like almost like a, I don't even know how to describe it. Like it was just like sensationalized, and it wasn't really, it was just there to be there rather than actually making some type of meaningful critique on society, where I feel like because The Unworthy is following basically like a women's convent where there's mostly women, there's only like one male figure, and that's someone that they view basically as their god, that it ends up having a much better critique and a much more thorough critique of like way women are treated in like society, versus Tender as the Flesh, I feel like was not really there in that aspect. And I think also following like a female main character versus following a male main character in Tender as the Flesh does kind of...
Yeah, I think Tenders of Flesh was a lot like big picture because you're seeing this main male character like go through these different industries. He seems to be pretty high up, and you're like getting a lot of little snippets of like very like macro level stuff where this was more micro, those interpersonal relationships. We're seeing these arbitrary hierarchies that are still forming in a capitalist society that's decayed and is gone. Like we know that there's no more dragonflies. The oceans have turned into deserts. And they're still maintaining these weird hierarchies within their own society, and only women who are not like plagued. We don't even really know exactly what
contaminated,
but there's contaminated, likely from like who knows, like radioactive things leaching into the water. We know that
I thought I was viewing it more as like being a virgin / not being a virgin because of the twist at the end. Not to spoil anything, but that's what I was viewing, like how they were viewing contamination.
Yeah, I do think there's like a double-edged nature to it, where it's like we need purity because like that's what men want in terms of patriarchal ideology, not just me like giving these like
this is Mariah's opinion.
Yes, I'm actually
you must be a virgin
now. But no, like it is like if you think about it, the way that like patriarchy socializes young men into thinking like, oh, it will be vulgar here. They like, oh, the tighter the better. Like they always fucking say like these horrible things. And if you know anything about the way that like intimacy functions, is like you don't actually want that. That's not a good thing to have. So I feel like it is playing into that because you have like this one random dude that you don't really see, and he's actually like impregnating people.
Spoilers.
Specifically, like women. Spoilers, yeah.
We're in the spoilers here.
Yeah. Spoilers. The Enlightened. And I thought it was interesting. It was a really interesting tale. I did like how it turned. I did not know this. I don't remember it being queer. I'm sure I did find at some point that it was queer. But then it happened, and I was like, "Is this actually gonna?"
I kind of was getting that vibe early on too. Whenever she was first mentioning Helena, I think her name was, and stuff, because I feel like you kind of do get that vibe, which I do think. I almost wish it was more, I don't know, overt with those themes and stuff, because like there's kind of nothing that really ends up. There's no consequences for this in like the novel, which I feel like could have been there, which I don't know in Argentina if like gay marriage or anything is legalized there. I don't know if you know.
I can look it up, but
because I feel like that could have an important implication on how that is viewed, because I almost have viewed like this like camp and stuff, because obviously we understand that there's multiple ways you could take this and stuff, almost viewing it as like a conversion camp sort of critique as well.
It does appear that as of 2010, which was spearheaded by the socialist and New Encounter parties, they were able to get same-sex marriage legalized, which I think is pretty cool. But
2010 too.
I mean, we have same-sex marriage legalized in the
United
States, but does it mean that there isn't like repression against queer people still to this day? Because there is, like, because something is legal doesn't mean it's not happening.
Yeah, and I wonder if that was something that maybe could have been touched on a little bit more, because I feel like there was no, like, I don't want to say like consequences, because like obviously being queer isn't wrong or anything like that, but I do think because of the way that their cult was set up and stuff, I felt like there could have been something there within that to talk about the way that just because it's okay in society doesn't mean that it's okay within the cult or something. Like, I felt like it was just kind of like surface level. That's what I feel like a lot of this stuff was just too surface level. And I can understand, like, societally, if in Argentina and stuff, you can't talk about this as openly. I mean, I know here in the United States, we're becoming a higher state of censorship and stuff like that, where soon we're becoming under the same fire too, where we're not able to talk about like left-wing ideas and stuff as openly as we were able to before, if ever, really, in the United States. But I just do think that I just wish there was more to it, and then maybe I would have enjoyed it more too, instead of it just kind of being like running around talking about putting cockroaches in people's beds and stuff. And eating crickets.
If you're somebody that enjoys like the philosophical, I think you would like this. But if you're not in that camp, this is probably not going to be the book for you. This is a relatively short book, and the way it's constructed with those diary entries, which they don't have dates because they don't track.
They say they don't.
They say they, so like they don't,
but they do.
Like they're tracking seasons. They do know that like 24 hours is a day, but I don't think they track like holidays or months in the same way. Like they just know like a day and a week. That's what I was able to extract. Like they do know, I'm sure they know like a month is like around 30 days. So, and like years do exist, but it does seem.
I wish there was even like
it's not as clear, and I think I'm okay with being confused on certain things. Like, it's not going to hinder my enjoyment of a book, but I can see that if like that's something you require for a book, you aren't going to like it.
I just think all of the stuff that was in this is just almost done better in like Parable this Hour, except for like the queerness, which is not really relevant, I think, in Parable at all. This is the only thing that I think you could get differently. Versus instead of, you could just read Parable this Hour and probably come to a lot of the same conclusions that you would have reading this.
Yeah, it's like a nice alternative, not like a proper alternative read, but it's kind of in the same camp. And I wasn't expecting that in the slightest, which is, I think that's like the whole thing. Is like, I just wasn't expecting a lot of what was said in this book to be written the way it was. I personally, I like the way that she wrote a lot of it. I thought it was quite poetic at times. And I was like, okay, this is nice. And I like a little bit of poetry thrown into a book. Not to the point where it's like, what was it? This is How You Lose the Time War, because that one kind of went a little bit over my head at times. This one, it was pretty clear. It had some flourish to it. I felt like it was a little artsy, and I was not expecting to. I cannot stress that enough. I did not think I was going to like this book. And I did.
I didn't think I was going to like this book, and I didn't.
I know. Maybe I shouldn't have said anything. But I was like, as soon as I started reading it, I knew it was.
Well, I just think it's also like one of those books. Like, I'm tired of reading these books. Like, no offense, Mariah. We need to read something. I can't wait. We're reading Carl. We're reading Strength of the Few next. I'm about to be locked in because these last couple of books we've been reading, like The Haunting of Hill House and this, like, I'm telling you, these books are putting me to sleep. I finished this and I took like a 5-hour nap after.
Yeah, it's not, these are not like fast-paced books in the same, like, there's no like action sequence with like these.
No, like, she gets stabbed one time.
But I think, I don't know. I've been reading a lot more classics this year, so I'm becoming more acquainted to stories where like nothing happens. I just finished The Brothers Karamazov, and there's not a lot of action in that. But you know what? I still like, I get it, and I'm gonna read The Count of Monte Cristo now because I just picked it up.
Oh, I thought you said you didn't find it.
No, I couldn't find a used copy. I was looking for a used copy of it, and I did obtain it by buying it retail, which is a bummer.
I mean, yeah, you won't have anyone else's underlines or highlights in it.
Yeah. I was just like, well, maybe. And then I was talking to my partner, and he said it sounded interesting. So I think.
Well, I know people love the miniseries, so maybe you could watch that too. With they're making a miniseries with what the hell is his name? From the Hunger Games, he plays as Finnick.
Oh.
He's supposed to be.
I do know who you're talking about. Apparently Henry Cavill is in the Count of Monte Cristo movie, and he's like 16 years old. Just learned about that today.
Yeah, there's a miniseries in 2024 with Sam Claflin is his name. And I guess he's the Count of Monte Cristo. I don't know. I don't know really that much about the book. But I know the miniseries got 7.8 stars on IMDb.
I don't know. Maybe if people want it, we can read it in the background at some point over the course of the next year.
It's a big book.
And upload it. It is a very long book.
It's like book, this thicker than Carl.
Like proto John Wick is like what it's about. It's about a man that was like wrongly accused for a crime, and he's gonna get this treasure and he's gonna take his revenge. And I was like, yes, that's John Wick. So I don't know.
I haven't seen John Wick, so can't.
Okay, it's not
John Wick,
but
John Wick get revenge because people kill his dog.
Yeah, but you know, that was the vibes.
I don't know.
In my head, I was like, Anyways, I don't have a lot more to say about this book in terms
which is sad.
It's very short.
It is very short.
But
that's the thing, is that, like, I think if there was more to it, even maybe if it was 100 pages longer, which I probably would have hated it more if it was, but then at least there would be maybe a little bit more substance, because I preferred the flashback scenes compared to her being in the convent, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. They don't even have, like, a name really for their people, like, for whatever their group is.
she has to go to the what was it called? The Sisterhood of something.
I don't know.
Down somewhere.
Well, I mean, because, like,
House of the Sacred Sisterhood.
Oh yeah. Well, because, like, what was interesting too, because there's, like, the whole, like, servants and stuff, and I feel like exploitation around that probably could have been discussed more, but, like, it was hard for me to feel empathy for this character too, because she was kind of like a hater for, like, everyone.
I think another reason that maybe you didn't enjoy this is because you did not grow up religious.
Yeah, I also
think that seems to happen a lot, where there's, like, religious themes in your book and you're just like, I don't get it. And you know what? A lot of it doesn't make any fucking sense, but, like, you do follow these things and believe these things that you're
I don't.
So fucking out there. Like, it's because it's like, I'm not.
My question is,
all religions. I'm gonna say that.
How are you autistic and religious? Like, how did you believe that?
It's Jesus is their hyperfixation.
No, I just mean, like, you specifically, because I remember, like, I mean, like, my mom tried to make us religious, you know? She was never like, God isn't real. And, like, I went to church sometimes, but I remember always being there, and I was like, I don't know how y'all believe this.
I asked a lot of questions, and then I got in trouble for asking questions, because I was like, none of this really makes any sense, and then I get upset about it, and it's like, but, like, this doesn't make sense. And I think that led me to just read the Bible more, and then I read the Bible more, and I was like, this ain't right. I don't know.
Somebody's lying.
It is. There's definitely, like, I do think a lot of, like, older women are fixated. I think that is their thing, because they're undiagnosed autistic, and they, like, lock in, and they love Jesus, and they love it, and they just, that's their thing. I do think people take a lot of it, and they are so downtrodden by capitalism that it's, like, the opioid of the masses. It really does keep you distracted, because you're just focused on moving on to the next life where everything is going to be better.
But this doesn't even have that critique.
This is, like, a religion that's emerging out of this society to, like, keep them alive, and they're supposed to, like, do it for their god. And it's like, it's supposed to be so overly dramatized that, like, you can tell, like, this isn't adding up. But if you grew up in a society where, like, I don't know, there's nothing, and, like, children are being sexually assaulted in the streets, like, you can't trust anyone, and there's, like, okay, these people, they're gonna feed you, but you gotta do these things, like, over time. That's just how brainwashing works within these cults. So it's not people who have, like, critical thinking skills, like, really well built up. This is why literacy campaigns are so important in a socialist society. We need those so that you can combat it, because this is a society where those literacy rates went away.
Well, so that's because people were burning their books and stuff, because that was the only way to keep warm and things like that. I felt like whenever she was talking about, like, the tarantula kids and her time with her cat and stuff like that, like, I felt like all of those things were immensely more interesting and immensely more opportune to talk about, like, climate change and, like, why society is the way that it is, versus her being in the covenant, whatever, I don't know. And it just felt like if the setting were different and everything, like, if it was more of, like, the flashbacks, I think I would have enjoyed this a lot more than... Because I'd say, like, 80% of this is her just, like, they're watching me, I have to write this in the dark, and I'm using blue-colored ink this time. Like, I don't care. For real, just say whatever you need to say.
Well, I felt like her talking about that was kind of saying, like, the links that she was going through to make sure that she was remembered. This time on Earth was remembered, and she was willing to do anything just to, like, create pigment to document it. So hopefully people could learn from what happened. Like, this time existed, people did, like, these things. And I had this experience, and I viewed it differently as I went on, and I met friends, and we formed solidarity. Like, kind of like, that's the vibe. It was like, I'm putting this in the street, and hopefully it'll work out, and if not, it's going to melt away. I mean, that's all we can do, like, with documentation, is nobody wants to be forgotten.
Yeah, I just think a lot of it was too repetitive in certain spots. It's like, okay, I get it, you know? Because there was just so much of her, I'll write this one day, and one day it'll melt down into the trees, and nobody will read it, or one day somebody will find it. And that's just, like, continuously repeated throughout, where it's like, okay, I get it, you know? Especially since this book is already so short, I don't think that needs to bear repeating multiple times whenever you already have such a limited number of pages. For that probably would have taken out like 10 pages if she didn't repeat it 5 times.
Well, do you have anything else you want to say?
Not really. I don't think, me personally, I want to read another one of her novels. Unless it's like the best thing ever written. I don't think her writing style is for me. And it could also be a huge translation issue as well. Because I remember during Tender as the Flesh, like, the translation was not it. And I think for this too, like, it just comes off. There's no emotion, I feel like, in the writing. Which, I don't know, maybe listening to the audiobook, it gave more emotion because there's, like, a voice actor doing it. Versus this, it felt very stilted, I think. Personally.
I don't know. I mean, I went back through and I was looking at different passages. I also had this on my Kindle, so I had some passages I could look at and see what they were saying, and I thought it was fine. Like, I didn't have an issue with, like, the emotion. I feel like I could read in between the lines and the subtext enough to extract it. So I didn't have that problem personally.
I don't know. I just didn't like
perhaps not liking that structure. I don't need, like, I prefer a story that isn't all, like, tell and more like show, like this, where it's like I could figure out how she was feeling, what she was doing, like her deliberation.
I mean, I could understand it, but I just wish that it was more like the I wish the writing had more of a voice, because I felt like it almost felt like robotic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, up until like the end, because she kind of is like, she's in a cult and she's following like this doctrine. So it's just not acting outside those lines and kind of being void of emotion out of survival was part of it. Like, they can't form attachments to each other because they're kind of fighting against each other, you know?
I mean, yes, but I just think, because you could see in like certain parts, because obviously there'd be lines where they're crossed out and stuff, where I wish, the thing is that this, her thing, like, with her writing this or whatever, as her act of rebellion and stuff like that. So I don't understand in your act of rebellion why you would keep yourself still so stilted in that way if you're already doing wrong. I don't understand, like, what you think you'll get away with only doing partly wrong versus it's already all wrong in her, in the way that they're going to view it if she gets caught writing this.
I don't know. Maybe she also hasn't written anything before. So there's that. But I just didn't, like, I don't know. I didn't think about any of that. I
don't know. I was whenever I was reading it. I don't know. I just remember, too, it was making me really tired.
Yeah. Well, our next book, I don't think it's going to be interesting. One, we're going to read, which we already said, This Inevitable Ruin by Matt Denneman is going to be our next episode. Mm-hmm. And we're following that with The Strength of a Few by James Islington. And then whatever our book club is picking right now, it is in between 2 different books right now that I think there was only a couple hours last time I checked. I think, oh my god, it logged me out.
After the Revolution is winning right now. 50% of the votes are to After the Revolution by Robert Evans. Woo.
I think that will be an interesting one.
I don't know. It's not very popular.
It's popular in the book club.
We'll see.
I heard the other book is kind of liberal, so...
I mean, I think most of the books we end up reading are liberal, because that's what gets published.
The popular ones are liberal. But this one, I think, has the capacity to do something really cool. And I'm very curious.
We'll see.
What that cool thing will be.
Anyways, I guess if there's nothing else to talk about, join the book club. Hopefully, whatever the book that is picked next actually has chapter markers so we can discuss throughout reading as well, because that was not something we were able to do with this book, because even though there's perfect and ample opportunity to make chapters, it was not done, which I think is another frustrating thing. So maybe don't read this with your book club.
This was a very difficult book to read with a book club. I completely agree with that, because of the way it's structured. It doesn't make for a very good book club read.
No.
Because what are you going to say? Oh, on this, like, asterisk
number 300. Yeah. And I think that's another problem too, where it could have been better if we weren't reading and like planning on discussing it, because I do think there's not too much to discuss. I mean, you know.
Well, we got 41 minutes out of it.
I think half that time we weren't even talking about this.
Please look up the Dirty War. Look up Operation Condor. Please look those things up. Open up your mind. Okay. No, they're really relevant. I can't express how like much people need to learn about U.S. interventionism.
Yeah.
And what happened and what we've done. Like, please. I'm trying to get Kristen to read Still Life with Bones.
The audiobook.
I was listening to it. It is narrative,
I will tell you, the audiobook is available on Libby right now, but I'm in the middle of 2 other nonfiction books that I'm listening to, so I figured I'll leave it available for whoever wants to read it, and then whenever I'm all caught up with my nonfiction books, I could read that. Okay? I do think that this is something, because this didn't really even discuss about U.S. interventionism, like, at all, either. Which,
well, I don't.
And neither did Tinder is the Flash. But maybe it should. Maybe it'd be better then.
I would be... Hey, next book? I'll read the next one if it's anything like this. But if it's another short story collection, I don't think I'll read it.
Okay.
That's just... all I have... I don't have anything else to say.
Okay. Other than that, I guess join the book club on Fable. LitLib podcast. Is that just what it is on Fable?
LitLib Pod Book Club.
Okay. Look that up on Fable.
That's how you look it up.
Well, if you're watching this on YouTube, you won't be able to use the link. That's why.
I'm going to try. I need to go back and put it in the comments and pin a comment with the links, as I think that might be a viable way around it. I think that's what other people are doing. I don't know.
We'll see. I think eventually soon we should be able to get approved to post a description soon. Anyways, other than that, thank you and good night.